Welcome, people. This is Dr. Zoo. Life is a highway, no doubt about that. Up and down that road. What a journey. What a journey. Now we've got everybody on board, ready to get stuck into it today. It is the Thursday, Thursday, 9th of April. We are buzzing along like you wouldn't believe. Buzzing. Everybody excited. Can everybody hear Dr. Zoo out there? Just a little quick thumbs up would be awesome, just in case, because I don't want to be talking to myself. I do that plenty of times now. If we can get a signal. One of those. See, yes, well done, worldly newbie. That's all we need. If it's just you and me, that's going to be fantastic. No, we got two people listening there and confirming. Awesome. Well, people, just a quick one on the Zootopia team beavering away at 1,000,000 miles an hour. We have had some of our long-term supporters. So not that everybody's not a long-term supporter in Zucaz SplitChain world, but we're getting a bit of a handle that probably the last week, I'd say, either beginning or end of it, but we'll be definitely getting this show on the road for Zootopia. So just stay with it. The team's doing a marvellous job, and in fact they have been very much busy also on the other fronts, which is to shore up the anticipated tsunami of silly sellers that we're expecting and get that thing out of the way, get that off the table so we can all relax and enjoy the fruits of our high risk digital asset purchase that we've been involved with. I saw the other day that the great Sam Altman, does anybody know who he is? He's in a constant battle with the even greater Elon Musk, fighting over AI, open AI, so ChatGPT is Sam's little baby, but he's just burnt his ass big time on his altcoin, which is called Worldcoin, and it has plummeted 98-odd%. In fact, 98.3%. Why? Because it was a stupid product. Pretty simple, really. Did nothing. And in fact, what they try to do is go to the extent of saying that in order to get one of those coins, you needed to have a retina test, your eyeballs put in a machine, and then they take the data. I mean, blind Freddy could have told us that wasn't going to be a great idea. People have enough trouble now with their facial recognition. I see the influencers are having great trouble accessing their accounts lately. They run out there and get all excited with their 1,000,000 viewers and all the things that they show us, which are wonderful, and they influence us into bad decisions. And funnily enough, they don't put some mechanisms in place. Now, someone's sound is not working. Let's try that. Don't understand you're worried about the silly product take care of itself. I'm not worried about it. Dr. Zoo doesn't care if you're stupid enough to sell. What we're worried about is creating that absorption so that if you do have the great test of more and more wallets, then of course you can pick that up, because we don't want to, particularly Dr. Zoo. Dr. Zoo's spent $50 million on this project and doesn't really want to see idiots out there, but nevertheless they're there. That's part of how the world works, and you got to map it out and plan for it. Better to plan for it. If you don't plan for these things, you are in serious trouble. If you just take it face value, then A, we wouldn't be where we are today with the excitement of how wonderful the product works, or B, where we want to go down the road into the future, because there's a lot of headwind coming. In fact, that's leading into the big discussion today. Now, if you don't want to know about the terrible things in the world and how that can impact on the financial institutions and spills, already we're seeing a little bit of it now. People worried about a little bit of petrol. I didn't finish off on the influencers though. Now, how crazy is this? They make a fortune. They set up their facial recognition, and then they forget to fix it or have a access passcode in case the facial recognition doesn't work, and then they go off and get brand new lips, and they get their face redone, and guess what happens? They can't access their own phone and accounts. Now, isn't that extraordinary? It's just magnificent how dumb the world can be. So all of a sudden you have this biometrics, you promote it, you talk about it with Apple, and you get excited and you put your face across the screen, and then you forget, you go and take up a little bit of an operation and put that stuff into your lips, and the computer won't recognise it. What a beautiful thing. Now again, people, we've had a couple more people this week that have been accessing their phones or changing phones, and then they say that they coins don't pop up in their wallet. Well, they don't pop up for a reason, because you've lost the wallet or you've transitioned and you haven't followed instructions. But as long as, and we've turned this around pretty quickly, as long as you have backed up, we don't care where you've backed it up. Well, we do, but we'd like you to back it up at least into your file or your folders on your phone, in your iCloud, on a USB, the hard drive on your computer, because you don't have to worry if it doesn't appear on your phone. You just download another wallet, and then you upload or restore exactly the backup, and boom, there will appear your coins, no question. So please try and make sure that, and you know, when you get the coins, people have signed off that they've done that. The app itself tells you to back up. There's multitudes of instructions, and it is very easy, one of the easiest ones. And in fact, it's a sad world that we live in there, because the FBI produced a report the other day as well, and $11 billion has been lost in the crypto space. So we don't want to be adding to those statistics because people haven't backed up. And there is absolutely nothing HQ can do about that. Dr. Zoo can do nothing if you haven't backed up and lose your coins. The good news is, let's just put the positives out. Let's say, for example, that you are running around with 100,000 coins and you lose them. Now, because there's a fixed supply and they can't be rebuilt or re-engineered or miraculously come back, because of that, it means they're gone. Well, they're actually still on the chain, but nobody can access them. It's a crazy world, but that's how it is. Now that means there's 100,000 less floating around, which means that for those of us that have retained our coins, or some of them, then of course that will increase the value, because that's 100,000 less floating out there. That is the hard, tough world we live in. Again, you cannot beat that great Newton third law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You lose your coins, we win. Equal and opposite reaction. So just remember that, people, because it is a very, very tough gig, this crypto space. We've done everything possible to lock and load for people to take the best advantage and opportunity. That is the power of what we're trying to do. Now, someone's indicated here, don't just save on phone only as if you drop the phone or lose it. You will lose backup too. That is spot on. That's why you need to push it to a few other areas like a USB, and even USBs. They don't last forever either, people. So you certainly can do that, and hard drives. The other thing you can do, which we haven't really promoted much yet, but you can, let's say you've got your backup on the computer, then of course what you can do is open that file, that My Secret file, and it looks like a whole heap of Egyptian hieroglyphics when you see that file opened, and then you can print it out. Now, again, subject to the how good your printer is. You could certainly print that on a piece of paper and don't let sunlight get on it, but put it in a vault or somewhere, and at least you have it on a hard piece of paper, a hard copy as such, and you could restore it from that piece of paper. So very dangerous if someone gets hold of the paper though, and if you have older kids and they find that, then they might decide to get an earlier bonus on their inheritance. So that would not be good. And of course encryption, someone's mentioned here, that's another way to put that in play. We are going to, down the road, when the dust settles and we've got everybody happy with a high price and people are buying up all sorts of trinkets and things that they're going to do with their money, we are going to keep tweaking and look at the opportunity of, say, QR codes where you can back it up to a QR code and you could actually put that into a physical form. It might be a sheet of metal and hide that somewhere, and suddenly you've got a wonderful treasure hunt environment. So that will be awesome. Now, we mentioned earlier about the great Sam Altman. Now, he pumped and dumped basically his little Worldcoin, 99.8 odd percent collapse. He walked away with 65 million more recently and a lot more before that on the nonsense of that particular coin. So they're all circling now as to trying to make a user case example of what they can and can't do with these coins. And that's been always the problem. So that's why we've focused on the big picture. We try our best to look at all aspects of what's out there and what may impact on where we want to be, because we want to make sure we've got true global adoption, multiple current countries, capacity for utility, and that's all for your benefit. And Dr. Zoo. Dr. Zoo likes to see more and more of the coins and fractions in play, because the more that happens, the better the utility and usage and also increase in price. That's been subject to the formula of Dr. Zoo since day dot, the quantity theory of money, people. Now, we've got a commentary here about that if someone steals your phone and is savvy enough to find your Zucoins, have you lost them? Yes, it would be a battle that you would need. If you know your phone is gone and you are concerned about that, the idea is ideally, not to back them up on your phone, or at least encrypt them on your phone at worst case, but have them backed up somewhere else that's private to you. But in that instance, let's say you did have the phone stolen, you weren't sure, and you do have another backup. Your first thing you would do is to rush out, get another phone, and immediately download a wallet and restore from the backup you have. And then you would need to move those coins urgently to another wallet through a send. Okay? So, because if you leave that there, you've got two parties, and whoever's basically the quickest, then that person would have access and could also move those coins, and you would be a big loser. So make sure if you are worried about that and you did have it on your phone, then you do need to urgently put it into another wallet, restore the backup, and then transfer from that wallet, because remember the other party still got the backup, but transfer immediately from that wallet into another fresh new wallet which you have under your control, and you're not concerned about the old wallet with the backup. Now, if you have any troubles with that sort of stuff, make sure you just give good old Pete a bit of a holler on the support@zucoins.com, and he can give you a quick email back onto that process. But the best example is to download your wallet to a USB, encrypt it, and then put the USB in a safe spot. Because you've only got to remember, people, look at the poor fellow over there that had $200 million of Bitcoin on his hard drive, and he had a little bit of a tiff with his beautiful, wonderful missus, and she threw it in the shitter at the tip, and he'd been trying to look for it for the last couple of years, and has conceded defeat that he can't obtain that particular computer from a tip in England, and it has gone down the toilet. Great news for people who have Bitcoin with that number of coins gone. Bad news for both him and his ex-girlfriend. So do not go down that road. Very, very ugly. Now, these sort of questions here we've got, you can have two wallets. You can have two different two different wallets, but you can have two wallets on Apple. You can't do it on Android. That has one wallet option, but it doesn't mean to say you can't back it up and then restore to another wallet or transfer. So there's a few options there. Is it possible to have an option to lock your wallet like you can? You know what? We were going to do that. We went down that road some years ago with a PIN code access to a wallet. Now, the reality is, if you're stupid enough not to protect your phone, you're going to lose everything else that follows anyway. There are a lot of products that have separate access PIN codes, even if you've got a PIN code access to your phone, which everybody should have. Most people are running around with biometric ID or passcodes to get into your phone. Technically, you'd think that would be enough. But the reason we decided not to continue with... some people may recall when we released that wallet, by the way, and it was really good. It gave you the ability, like you would with downloading an app from your bank. I think a good one is an app like from a bank called Ostwide, and they have 6 digits or more PIN codes. Someone's just put in their fingerprint, and that can work well. So you have your banking apps, and then a lot of them have two-factor authentication. They send you a text on access, and then even if you get into the bank account, you've got to have SMS because they don't allow transfers, and there's a whole raft of things. So, in that instance, we ran with it. And then guess what happened? People couldn't remember their login passcodes to their wallets. Surprise, surprise. Which meant that we then had to be a centralized body to try and allow people to do all sorts of magic to try and restore their passcodes, which is what happens when you rely on things like banks and things. That's centralized. So that's a no-go zone for a decentralized product. That is your problem. Again, you've got to use the analogy, everybody. If you've got $100 in your back pocket right now in your wallet, one is you don't generally have a PIN code access to your wallet. You look after the wallet. So if you've got no connection to live show, that would be an internet problem, not ours here. Funnily enough, you're on the right show number. So I can't help you in that regard, guests, other than wait for the repeat of the show. Now, we've got here, grateful being, that since you believe you've conquered, that's a big word. That's a word that I'm going to spill into shortly. It's going to be a hard and fast 30 minutes of shock and awe, people, because I know a lot of you don't want to worry about what's going on around the world, but you do need to worry. You do need to worry. Now, yes, we've thoroughly believe we've conquered the crypto. Well, not the market. We've conquered the crypto technology. The market's to come next. That's the next phase. So when we unleash the Zootopia, then of course we'll start crowing a bit more, because then we've got Zoocaz to come with our main mass marketing program, and we're super happy with that. That's beavering away very nicely, by the way. The team is full throttle on that one as well. Won't talk about that today. We've covered that, but if you do want to see what Zoocaz version 1 has done, then by all means just pop on and have a look at zoocaz.com. You can revisit the videos and updates what we were doing then. Nothing's changed, excuse me, other than Zoocaz version 2 is far superior and delivers a lot of the outcomes that I need for direct notification communication for the fractionalization and delivery of the tokens or fractions of coins and vouchers, etc. Won't talk about that now. Go and have a look at the website. You can also have a look at Xrii. That's xrii.io. That is the white labeling business version of Zoocaz, and it is a very, very powerful thing that's been beavering along for some years now and doing a marvellous job on proving the technology and the marketing capabilities, which is spectacular. And then, of course, as part of that, we then need to prove the concepts of the tokens themselves, which will lead into fractionalization for the lottery plus the components that are required for Turfstar, the horses. So that's on the move as well. We had a bad ride yesterday, team. It wasn't good. Just sort of Rodagilla. He was let down. This is what happens when you put in play the wrong people on the right horse. It's you can't have that sort of lack of maturity as a rider on a horse, and you're 9 lengths near last on the turn, and then you start to weave your way through the pack, and you decide that you needed to sniff every bum humanly possible, or horse bum on the way through, try to go to the inside, move to the outside, move back to the inside, and then lose it by a couple of lengths. But that is one of the things that you've got to deal with. External forces beyond your control. Because these are what Dr. Zoo has talked about in the past, the black swans. The ocean looks calm, and then there's this huge tsunami coming at us. And we're in the midst of some of the biggest tsunamis this generation is going to ever see, and preparations can be made as to really unleashing what we have so that we don't get damaged by that hit, even though we're in the financial sector. But it's important that the success is all about the mass marketing and how that's driven. At the end of the day, look, all you early adopters care about really is price. So we can work our way through that. What we want to see, though, is changing the entire thought process of how you get the control and sovereign control of your wealth, because it's gonna happen. You wake up one morning and there's some wally there that wants to take it off you. Now, just on that, let's just spin into these left field things that can happen. Now, I've talked about, as Dr. Zoo, asset protection. We've talked about maximising the safety and security. Everything's driven by that. The firepower on decentralising the exchange which is perfect for Zootopia. The ability to get wallets from multiple sources. Already there's a few of those, not just the core Great Roberts app that you guys have, the wallet. We have visions of hundreds of thousands of those that can be verifiable against the chain, so that's easy. The speeds are there now. The two-factor authentication is extraordinarily fantastic. So all those boxes we've ticked. And the next phase, of course, is what we're in. Now, we wouldn't be speaking about this if we hadn't have done the hard work on the earlier soft launch with Zootopia and where we're coming in the next couple of weeks. We wouldn't even be worrying about it. And I've got to tell you, it's a relief because it's going to be pretty swish, very fast, super responsive for new people coming in, because it's not just you guys. You guys have been conditioned to how the wallet and thing works. You've just got to think about a brand new person coming in and picking it up real quick and getting on with it. So I know you don't really worry or be concerned about the world and what the world's doing. But let me tell you, Dr. Zoo was part of earlier world mini disasters that affected everything humanly possible in your finances, whether it's an increase in interest rates or rising and falling oil prices at the gas pump, whether it's a collapse in the property market or gold or all those things. So you need to have a shield or fallback of things that you know are coming. You've got to prepare for it. Now, I'm going to touch on a subject now that is the biggest threat and basis upon which the financial world, including Zucoin SplitChain, which is the explosion growth of nodes and protections to the system that keeps you alive with your sovereign control over that wealth. Now, this isn't about you getting excited because, we wake up in the next few weeks and the price of the coins have gone to $5 and $10 and $20 and $50 and $100. That's fantastic. It's more about as it smashes through those barriers because of adoption, utility, explosive growth through fractionalisation. There's another article the other day, the great J.P. Morgan, talking about $13 trillion of real-world assets coming into this space if you've got the firepower to handle that tokenisation, which is what we're on about. Now, suddenly, if your wealth goes up, one of the hardest things ever is that once you get wealth and money, it is goddamn hard to crawl back down to base camp because something comes out of nowhere and you're not ready. Now, how do I know that? Well, Dr. Zoo was having a great time in the 80s. Great time. Monkeys were throwing darts at boards and stocks and shares, were going from 3 cents to $6.90 in 24-hour cycles. Some stocks were going to $100, $200. The asset base didn't change, but the values went through the roof. And there were takeovers and acquisitions and mergers, and there was the great John Elliott and the Elders and the BHPs and the Robert Holmes Accords in Australia. There was the great Carl Icahn and the big hitters that came out with new products, utilising those products to maximise massive growth in these mergers and acquisitions, which reflected share price. And it's going to happen with tokenisation. There is going to be a massive surge because it is proper productivity and utility. It's not sitting there floating around like Bitcoin in the last 4 days, waiting on Trump to say the Strait of Hormuz is good, It's open for business now. It's closed. We have peace in our times. Those immortal words. There is going to be a ceasefire there. And every word becomes a trigger for the up or down movement of asset classes in a volatile way. I mean, we saw just in the last few days, Bitcoin was smashing through nearly $72,000 US. Smashing through it. Now she's back to 70,000 odd and on the skids again. Why? Because of the Middle East. And that will have a direct impact on everything. Just because there is the capacity for bigger institutions, it doesn't mean they're going to be your saviour in any of these asset classes. In fact, it was the complete opposite in the 80s. They were the worst possible investors in company shares ever because they don't care. They either short sell or they dump and they get out and they take the losses and they drag everybody with you. Which is why there's been a deliberate strategy since day one to maximise the capacity for the small person to get involved with Zucoins. You can have one Zucoin. You can have a fraction of a Zucoin. You could have 20. If you get 100 million people quite happily parking 10 Zucoins, that's your quantity theory of money right there. That is the extraordinary fallback position that doesn't rely on the big hitters burning everybody's ass. Now, why there's a story going around in crypto world that the guns in Binance and Coinbase and a few other big exchanges have been playing with Bitcoin to the extent that the poor retail bloke that tries to buy in thinking it's rising at 72 and is now down the toilet at 70,000 US dollars in Bitcoin, same with Ethereum and all the rest of it, are controlling the market because there's no support from you're not going to get some person in the African jungles who's got a phone stumping up 70,000 US dollars to buy a Bitcoin. But you will get the whole tribe, given there's utility to buy things with a Zucoin as what our long-term mandate is, because there's no fees and charges, and it's globally instant and all the rest of it. The whole tribe can come in and buy 10 Zucoins. That's the differential. Now, if the firepower is in the current environment, which is we're in a hostile financial world at the moment, people. Now, in the last week, I wanted to go through and see. Nobody wants to, that we don't like to think about it, but the reality is history is one of those most extraordinary creatures. It will always rear its ugly head. Doesn't matter whether you're in 1890 when the banking crisis happened in Australia because of the influx of gold and the pressure that put on the economy at the time, or whether you're in 1929, or you can go back to 1668. You can go back further than that. We don't learn. We don't listen to the call of history, and it's happening again. You know, we had all this oil crisis back in the 70s and 80s. It was a train wreck. It doesn't go away. And then you try and say, well, let's pinpoint where has been the biggest single pressure point that we want to be aware of, be ready for, and thumb our noses at because we don't care. Because the power of that sovereign control on Zucoins is extraordinary. It locks you in and out of the main systems to buy and sell. It preserves the balance between privacy and public. It makes sure you are in control, which is what the entire ZUCAS mandate is all about again. We talked about that the other day. We're sick and tired of the aggregated companies that are controlling through AI now, the firepower through Meta and Instagram and TikTok and all those wonderful things. They don't care about you. All they want is generate massive rivers of gold of advertising. And that productivity is driven purely by now AI agents, which is scary stuff. But the real taboo, people, was highlighted to me by a number of people concerned. That is to Dr. Zoo. Now, if you don't like what you're going to hear now, buzz off. Right? If you don't like it, buzz off. Because the reality is everybody has a free will. You have a free will to decide whether you take the risks of wanting to be involved in these projects. People took the free will to be involved with Sam Altman, who has a pretty bad reputation on the products and what he's doing behind the scenes, involving trillions of dollars. So there's an article, well, someone here has put up, would I contact Sam? No, I wouldn't contact Sam at all. I have no desire in Dr. Zoo's lifetime to contact Sam Altman. That Worldcoin was absolute nonsense. I think I've done an article on that particular coin. Now, we're not mixing it up with Donald Trump's coin, but we're mixing it in the sense that this is recent, hot off the press news. I'd like to meet Elon, but I think Elon himself is going down a dangerous path, trying to globalise X money, given all the knowledge we've had on how that happens with multitudes of regulators. And already he's taken some massive hits in Europe because they get a bit worked up over there. Everybody in regulation likes a centralised body because that's a soft target. You put your hand up and you take a whack. If it's decentralised, there's no one to talk to because the product is free roaming. It's fully compliant, but it's got its own structure, which is to a certain extent what happened with Bitcoin until it went off the rails because good old Satoshi didn't think far enough forward about the complications of just validating a transaction, which is absolute nonsense today. When you don't need to think too hard on that. I mean, even I think yesterday there's an article that the New York Times is suggesting that Adam Back is Satoshi. Now, we've done a bit of homework on the semantics and the language of the Bitcoin white paper with the help of my 5 little mates. And we would say to you that it's not Adam Back. Adam Back, he says he's not a Satoshi himself, but we would say he's not Satoshi. And we've talked about that in terms of some of the stuff we've produced, which is called Pascal, the way in which language and code is written in early days with the Microsoft backing of called Pascal. You can look that up yourself. But that's for another day. So I think that at the end of the day, I've got enough time just to throw this spanner in the works in terms of be worried now, not because of where we sit, but what we're preparing for, is it's going to get worse. Dr. Zoo's view is that the Middle East is going to get worse. It's going to get worse. Why? Because history tells us it's going to get worse. And be ready. Now, there is one critical element in that history of the Middle East that leads to that, and it also leads to, which is part of the closing sort of summary today, about Dr. Zhu's support for Ben Roberts-Smith, our VC hero. As I said, if you don't like where this is going, there is always something else on YouTube for you to look at or listen to. Okay? And what we're saying is this. Here we have, and my grandfather, Dr. Zhu's grandfather, fought in World War II, fought against the Japanese, even though we have a Japanese car today. And time has passed. The passage of time has seen Japan being extraordinarily strong friends through that journey, but not back then, not back in the 40s they weren't. And you have these brave young men at the behest of politicians directed to go to these countries and expected to fight for us. That's those of us that are left here. Families, women, children, etc. Now you're going to say, what's the connection? What's the common thread between the Middle East today and where Ben Roberts-Smith, who's currently in a cell, having won years ago for bravery the Victoria Cross, and now subjected to a criminal proceeding for alleged 5 deaths in relation to his duty on call in Afghanistan. And Dr. Zhu has analysed those charge sheets. And based on previous research papers about 1400 years of how we sit in the world and why we have these problems, the reason Dr. Zhu says that the Iranian situation is a farce is because of, let's say it, it is simply, it started in the year 610 AD by a warlord who enjoyed young women as his wife, sexually abused and raped women and that he had conquered, and decided that through his visions, pen would be put to paper, scrolls back in those days, and lo and behold, it was said that the angel Gabriel had put down the visions and the words that are binding through Allah, which is now the powerhouse religion we see today, with over 1.8 billion Muslims in various countries, etc., throughout the world, of which it's anticipated or expected that there was, for 1400 years, in excess of 7 billion. And there's some critical things that most people, and I would generally say Christians across the board, generally have to say nobody bothers reading the Quran, and probably not as thoroughly as the Muslims themselves should as well. Now I'm going to highlight, which spins back into one of the legal problems that I don't think the defence team for Ben Roberts-Smith has considered, but if they are listening, this is worthy of making sure that this man does not end up in jail for protecting the rest of us in a country, in a hostile country, which we are talking about, the basis upon which the foundation stone or the rock Now, there's not going to be a single Muslim disagree with me with what I'm about to say, because I'm not throwing in and making things up, giving anybody an opinion, talking about Islamophobia or hate speech or anything like that. This is coming directly from the Quran. The Quran is the full-blown basis upon which the strength of 1.8 billion people, of which the Iranian people collectively follow. Now, the first thing is, if you are a Muslim, you must be obedient to Allah and Muhammad. There is no question of that. It is repeated, and it has an unqualified command to obey Allah and Muhammad the Messenger. Now, they call it surah, which is a word for verse. So I'll talk about the verse. Verse 3:32 of the Quran says, "Say, obey Allah and the Messenger. But if they turn away, then indeed Allah does not like disbelievers." Verse 480, "He who obeys the Messenger," it's Muhammad, "has therefore obeyed Allah. But those who turn away, we have not sent you over them as a guardian." Verse 2451, "We hear and we obey, O Allah." Verse 3371, "And whoever obeys Allah and his messenger has certainly attained a great attainment." Now, there are a couple of so-called concessions. There's things in the Quran that says you don't need to strictly obey Allah or Muhammad, but in some very narrow, temporary and conditional concessions that are granted. Now, these are not like legal loopholes. These are things that include verse 286, which states that as long as it's within your capacity to continue, that is, you're fit and fighting. However, Allah is the protector, and it says, "So give us victory over disbelieving people." In other words, if you don't believe in Allah or obey Allah or Muhammad, you are a disbelieving person. Now, he does grant another concession in verse 184. If you are fasting and you are ill or on a journey, and then you can make up those days a bit later on. So that's basically for temporary illness or travel. There is a verse 173, which is similar to a number of other verses, that if there is a genuine force of necessity or convenience or some life-threatening situation, you can have a little bit of time off. Verse 48:17, if you are physically unable or in an incapacity, or you are on a jihad. Now, we all heard that word, jihad. Let's not go into that one just yet. But if you're on a jihad, you get to come in and out of your prayer sessions without worrying too much that you have disobeyed Allah. Now, these are not concessions to abandon the core duty and obligation to obey Allah and Muhammad. These are just some adjustments that fit the circumstance, but other than that, there is nothing in the Quran, Dr. Zu's had a good look, that tells you must not exclude any of the teachings and the commands of Allah and the Messenger. Now, this is where it gets interesting, people. And look, we've got our first person here saying he's not listening to this crap. Oh, I love it. Yep. It's not off topic. You're missing the point, people. If there is a complete vaporization as a result of the Middle East, you can kiss your financial circumstances goodbye. That is a direct correlation to preservation of sovereign wealth. Already you can't go to the petrol pump, and that's had an impact on fuel. I mean, do you need to be steered to understand that the global effects spill into every facet of our daily lives, including the preparations of what we're doing for the creation of decentralisation and the effect of that decentralisation? So let's finish with the reasoning why the Middle East will not have peace. It has never had peace, and it will not have peace, which means there's far greater preparation, especially with our weakened forces and especially with the attack on people like Ben Smith-Roberts, which circles back to the very essence of what he was dealing with in Afghanistan. Now, the crucial element for every single Muslim is to obey Allah, which includes the command to kill. Now, verse 9:5, and they say this is in context of the 7th century, etc. Well, it's not in context of anything. It doesn't say there was any other concessions as to when this stops and starts, or when Allah says it finishes. It's binding as it was then, as it is today, on the obedience to Allah. Verse 9:29. Fight those who do not believe in Allah. Verse 47:4. So when you meet those who disbelieve, strike their necks until when you have inflicted slaughter upon them and secure their bondage. Verse 2, 191. Kill them wherever you overtake them and expel them wherever they have expelled you. Fight them until there is no more. Pretty clear? Makes sense? That's why the Iranians will not surrender, because they have to be obedient to Allah. And if they don't surrender and they don't take heed of Trump and the West and what's happening, this will only get worse and worse. Which then brings us to the prospects that there is reasonable doubt, despite what may or may not happen with Ben Roberts in Afghanistan, that when you are dealing with that extensive concern, it makes a mockery of everything in terms of what's happening. Now, we've got here another exciting one. Let's have a look. It's not a political FM. Product updates. We're trying to give you the update because if the Middle East closes down, you fool, then that's going to impact on every single process on the planet, not just oil. If the attacks accelerate because of this religious fanaticism, how do you think databases are going to work? Where do you think data and AI is going to be funded from? What will happen to the internet and your glorious YouTube processes that you watch, or your social media, or your buying and selling? We can't secure oil or diesel. How on earth do you think you can protect yourself if it explodes exponentially because of what's happening that you don't want to see happening, and it's been happening for 1400 years in the Middle East. Just think about it. You're not living in bubbles, people. The system is being built against even things that are coming out in black swans like quantum computing. That's going to decimate Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's why they're worried now. But nobody wants to listen. If you haven't got Bitcoin, you don't care. Well, we care because it's the overall industry. And if you don't understand the basis upon which these things happen and the opponents you're dealing with, you've got Buckley's hope. I mean, the West is a demand sector. If the US market, which is so critical to mass adoption, suddenly takes some massive hits because a couple of ballistic missiles have decided to hit California and all over the place, how on earth do you think you're going to worry about the mass marketing approach? If you have ideas, more than welcome to receive them. Preparations and the strength of that market depends on the locations you're dealing with, which means there may need to be a greater push through Asia and isolate the problems, because the good news is we really don't need 100 million people. That's the exciting part in a bad world where we talked about for every action there's an equal opposite reaction. And I told you at the beginning of this, it's going to be hard to stomach. It's going to be tough. So everything that we do is strategically designed. We're not suggesting that it is the ultimate solution, but I tell you, it's way, way ahead of the curve. Because the Sam Altmans of the world that rely on Middle East money for trillions of dollars, we're going to see some real serious shit shows, especially with the markets, and that's why you've got to look at the adjustments that are happening. I mean, Bitcoin going down in 2 days is a phenomenal hit on its overcapitalisation. So the beauty is that nothing has gone to waste. And if you don't like the scenarios that's in front and centre, you can do 2 choices. You can go off and read the Quran yourself. It's available. You can go off and read the Bible yourself, or you can sit there and be an atheist. No one's forcing you to do anything. What we're doing is a counterattack in terms of preparation. And it's upsetting. But it's also an extraordinary time to be in this current scenario because of the technology. The last thing I would like to have is to be a Bitcoin miner trying to sit on a mining operation that costs $88,000 just to process a glorified transfer of a Bitcoin, and you're underwater at $70,000 on every coin you mine. Why would you turn it on? Because people didn't prepare for all of these scenarios that can happen. And the scenario I'm presenting is that Iran will not give up. Iran won't give up. That is in the nature of the beast because of 2 things. The reality check being obedience to Allah and Muhammad, and the other verses that tell them to go out and slaughter. It's pretty simple. That's not me making that up. That's there for all and sundry to see. Now, you wouldn't want to be running some of the greatest technology. We've had our team in Tel Aviv talking to people and the capacity to expand some of the extraordinary things that the Israelis have been doing. You would not want in a million years having your tech based in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. Now, imagine if our partners, which we had gone down that road, were there now trying to starve off flying missiles, and we're worried about whether we can get the SplitChain to work because it's on another database server that relies on Israel. Now, for the capacity of considering the Middle East and its history, we made deliberate choices not to be in those locations. We could have been in Dubai, one of the greatest tax-structured jurisdictions in the world. Instead, we made the choice and we put up with Jacinta Allen and Albo and the torturous policies that this country's had. That's the lesser of two evils, because you wouldn't even be able to get a plane out of Dubai, let alone if they start, which they will, attacking those infrastructures. The very moment the next Trump bomb hits a power station, it's game on. Everything is on the table to be decimated. And that includes reciprocal attacks, because the Iranians have not and never have given up based on a very small couple of verses in the Quran. That's the point I'm making today. It's pretty simple. You don't like it, but you've got to be in a position to work out how you overcome that. And decentralisation, without the interconnect that is happening with crypto now, that's going to be its downfall. Once you start that shifting away from what Satoshi was trying to do, you're back to where you very well started. Now, someone's got something about... We've got a couple of nice comments coming through. That's exactly right, magnificent newcomer. I'm trying to press the point clearly that the strength lies in the technology of decentralisation, because even if you had $100,000 of Zucoins because they've gone up to $1,000 and all the rest of it, and that's all people want. I get it. We all want that little few extra bob in the bank. But, you could have bought some Worldcoin coins the other day and blew 98% up your ass. You could have gone and got some HOC2 coins and dropped $490 million in 12 hours. I mean, we're here because we've taken the time to structurally put in place the correct technology that can maximise the decentralisation, because any one of you out there could end up with a humble plug-in to your computer or your website, and you suddenly become a node that keeps the entire SplitChain world going. You don't need to have $1 billion to put in hyper-cooled computer servers to run extraordinary algorithms that cost $88,000 of electricity and all the rest of it, to simply transfer one Bitcoin to another Bitcoin in a block. You do not need that. As time goes on, it means that any one of you, any one Zucoin person, can be the difference between keeping it globalised and going for the other 100 or 10 million or 50 million people that are processing Zucoins. Now, if there's a solar flare and it blows the shit out of the whole planet, or there's a meteor, that's a different story. We're all stuffed. You won't be worrying about Zootopia. You won't be thinking about Zootopia, right? You'll be watching those great movies like 2012 and reflecting upon how you missed out with your ticket on the Ark and you're swimming around out there because you've got your ass in a sling. So we're now, well, $100 to 77 cents, 70 cents. I remind you that we had some good trading at 105, and the system is the free totality of the market that comes down to whoever was the silly seller that had the drop. So, you can put that up there and excitedly talk to your fellow Zucoin holders as to what was the motivation. Now, on the flip side, they might have had some free coins from the original Zucaz days, and as a result, they've doubled their money or tripled it. Now, even today, as I've said, Bitcoin took 17 years to be where it is today, even at $70,000. If you had $100 Bitcoin and you watched it plummeted to $10 or $8.50, would you be saying the same things, or would you be just tucking them away knowing that the crypto space is caught up with the mechanisms of the market? Now we've got, I just planted my veggie garden, and you'll be able to purchase them using Zucoin. They will be listed on Zootopia Drop. Well, that's a brilliant idea, because all of a sudden, whether that's said in jest or not, it's spot on. It's creating a capacity for barter outside of the system that allows that produce to be tokenized, that can then be, well, what I'd like to suggest is that you'll be able to put that in as a product line into Zucaz, and it'll instantly, at a flick of a button, allow you to list that on Zootopia, and that particular fractionalization Zoo token could represent your veggies by weight or class and deliverables, and that could then be the token that on delivery means that on transfer between ownership proofs, there is a contract between you in relation to the particular produce, which is then transferable between participants around the world that want those veggies. And if that wants to take that outside of the totality of a Woolworths or Coles, that's exactly how decentralisation will work if everything goes completely pear-shaped, because we are not out of the woods with the Middle East. It will not happen. It will not happen. It is a massive train wreck. And the exciting thing is creating and freeing up the shackles from the structures of the system, because the last thing you guys want is that you get $1 million and the Combank says we're not going to transfer it. Why? Because we don't need to tell you why. Under Clause 18 of the Terms and Conditions, we have full discretion to do what we like. There is no free market transferability. Yeah, you can go and sue the bank and jump up and down and go to the Financial Complaints Authority and get all excited. And then there's an accusation that says, well, you've been naughty. Now, you don't need to have been naughty. You just need someone to say that there is an accusation of you being naughty, which is what I was circling back to with Ben Roberts-Smith. He was dealing in a country with people that to this very day are obedient to Allah and obedient to every section of the Quran. And if that means those people there have the mentality at all times despite putting down arms or whatever you want to call it, to conduct hostile events. I mean, the usage under Section 268(7) of the Criminal Code he's been charged under tries to then, you can reverse the onus of proof, where the prosecution has to bear the onus that the victims were not taking an active part in hostilities and had abstained from any hostile act. That doesn't define and isolate it to physical activity. That can also include the mental state of the persons they're dealing with. And if their mental state is to be obedient to Allah, well, that should not be questioned as to, in that country, that our famous diggers are subjected to criminal charges here in the name of being in the army for our glory back here. It's an absolute nonsense. Now, how do we know even that the extent of it's a nonsense? Have a listen on this note. At the interview, the press conference, the other day, about when Ben Roberts-Smith was arrested. Now, the Director of Investigations at the Office of the Special Investigator, Ross Barnett, who started this thing in 2021, he said the following, and listen carefully, people, because this could be any one of you one day, wake up with this little tsunami that's building out there, because we're all too clever and smart. We all don't like to listen or learn from history or think it could happen to me. You're coming into one of the most extraordinary phases of financial freedom ever, and you make the most of it. You will have at your fingertips the capacity to be sovereign control on a digital asset that no other digital asset can compete with. That's it, period. Yeah, you're getting all up, wound up. You want $3,000 this afternoon. We get that. The quantity theory of money will take care of that in itself. The external effects, better to be prepared. Forewarned is foretold. Now listen to this bloke, Ross Barnett. He tells the world, he said it was a careful and professional investigation under challenging circumstances. The seriousness of these charges has deserved nothing less. He then added, given the difficulty in even speaking to any people in Afghanistan, those affected by the alleged murders may not be aware of the arrest. And he says, quote, "The challenge for investigators is that we are 9,000 kilometres away. The challenge for investigators is that because we cannot go to that country, we don't have access to the crime scene. We don't have photos, we don't have site plans, measurements, the recovery of projectiles, or even blood spatter analysis. All of the things that would normally be in a crime scene. There is no post-mortem. Therefore, there's no official cause of death. So this causes a lot of challenges." Now, who let these loonies out of the hospital? You've got a background that I've just described that's been enshrined for 1,400 years, that these people, be it in Afghanistan or Iran or wherever else, must obey Allah, must obey the Quran. They have no concessions that allow them, otherwise they're not Muslims. Pretty simple. And it's like a lot of the listeners here. No one, there's a lot of people that aren't Christians. Well, that's fantastic. At least the punishments in Christianity are nowhere near anywhere the extent of what happens if you don't be a proper Muslim. So I'll finish on this because it is directly relevant to every single thing that we are doing right now, including working our little butts off to deliver the outcomes that we've set as our objectives in this jurisdiction with mass adoption. But you can forget about mass adoption in the Middle East, in the short term at least, that you can just put that in the shitter. And it's fortuitous people that, conscious of that environment, that we have the flexibility to move into areas that give us the greatest scope for the greatest explosion of wealth outside of what's happening, that you may not even get access to money in a global system because it will go pear-shaped. You think the global financial crisis of 2008 was a winner. Wait till you get hold of this one. You will be needing people growing vegetables and willing to accept Zoo tokens as the form of value transfer, because if it collapses on the whole high end of the system, you'll get nothing. And let me rest assured, Dr. Zoo has seen firsthand what happened in the 80s, that a lot of the listeners here today wouldn't have been wet behind the ears to understand that history will repeat itself again. Now, if you're a Muslim, do you really want to be punished? Verse 239, and those who disbelieve and deny our signs, that includes all of the others, Christians and Jews, will be companions of fire and will be eternally abiding therein. In verse 2, 161, indeed, those who disbelieve and die while they are disbelievers, so that's pretty well everybody out there listening, I would have thought, upon them will be the eternal curse of Allah and of the angels and of all the people, abiding eternally therein. The punishment will not be lightened for them, nor will they be reprieved. But my favourite is verse 3:10. Indeed, those who disbelieve, that's all of us if you're not a Muslim, or even if you are a Muslim and you transitioned out and saw the light, never will their wealth or their children avail them against Allah at all, and it is they who are the fuel for eternal fire. Now, how exciting is that, hey? And then people say they're going to turn off and they want to jump out of the show. Well, good luck to you. Good luck. Because the team at Dr. Zoo is doing everything it can to give you the best opportunity, not just to make money on the coins, but to have somewhere and something in place that you can be far greater control of your own wealth and financial destiny without going to an eternal hell and fire because you're a disbeliever. You've just signed your own death sentence under the Quran. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It is extraordinary if you sit down and read what is now capable of being read because of AI. I touched on this the other day. You've got every transcript. You've got every volume of the Bible, the Old and New Testament. You've got the scrolls. You've got every single Quran amendment. Thousands of amendments. You can go and check out the Turkish versions in 1928 and so on. I mean, it goes on and on. Just go and find and seek and then think about what we are trying to do. Because you know what? We can position ourselves in other jurisdictions, which these other cryptos are going to struggle because they haven't adopted the dumbed-down versions for the general masses of the population, period. I had a person the other day try to sort out Ethereum and lost the lot. $200,000. About ready to neck himself. Because we can go into countries like South America, Mexico, we can position ourselves in Africa, we can go to Europe and France, and we can do Spain, and we can do North America, Canada, we can do whatever it is. Because the simplistic of it is 1 million wallets is going to be the difference between $500 and $10,000 in price, because the other cryptos can't compete. They can't do transfer. They don't have the capacity with infrastructure. And if this blows up, which it will, you wait and you see the effect on these data centres. That's the key. As soon as you tackle and destroy the capacity of the volume of data, I've talked about the Great Wall of Bitcoin. You cannot sustain that massive storage and validation process if you don't have the billions spent on computers to process. And what are they doing? Processing a simple, stupid transaction, trying to stop the double spend with this unbelievable algorithms that you don't need. You, as a peer, do the heavy lifting. You have your data stored on your phones or backups. We talked about that today. You could be a node for $105 a month. There could be 10 million of you as nodes. And you know what? You only need one. Think about it. That one could be someone sitting with a satellite dish on a high mountain in Greenland, in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, with the Fakari tribe. And he's still providing the node service directly to Elon Musk's satellites at $105 a month, so that you get the glory of becoming super rich as you move your tokens or Zucoins around. Unbeknown to you that you don't care about the isolationism that can happen as a result of what's going to blow up in the Middle East, because you don't want to listen. And exactly the comments are here. Get it out soon. That's exactly what we do. We temper that with the perfection of what we've got, the strategy. And this now is a true race against time to really pump the hell out of it and get it out. Not just the coin side. We're talking about the decentralisation, which includes the add-on products that allow for the expansion and rapid growth in those other countries not affected by the disasters happening in the Middle East, which will blow up completely. And the use of getting it out, the purpose of today was it's an ugly topic. It's an ugly thing we just want to stick our head up our arse and forget about. And that's what we tried to do in World War One, and we tried to do it in World War Two. And the only difference is we had young people then prepared to fight for country and crown. Now we've got a whole bunch of losers, and we're whinging because one of our great Victoria Cross bravery members of the Defence Force, Ben Roberts-Smith, is putting up with this crap about what did or didn't happen in Afghanistan based on the mentality of people that are driven by obedience to Allah and the Quran. I'm not talking out of school here. I'm just quoting you and have quoted you what is there for everyone to see, what everyone else as a Muslim reads and obeys. If they don't obey, they're not a Muslim. Pretty simple. But we shouldn't have to have a country that undermines our defence force with this nonsense. And I know, Dr. Zoo know what it takes to work through a criminal trial and process. It's all right to say, yes, beyond reasonable doubt, innocent until proven guilty. Let me tell you, that's utter crap. The moment you walk into a room full of 12 members of the jury, you're gone. Your job is to prove your innocence. Because there's 12 people there that don't give a stuff. They're busy with their lives. They get $80 a day on the jury, or 100, it might be more now. They've got family, they've got to cook the meal tomorrow. And it's a lot easier to put someone away than it is not to put someone away. Because the entire mechanism of the proof coming from the prosecution has changed, and that's what's happening with Ben Roberts-Smith. How in the earth can you possibly even think about the ridiculous charges when by their own admission there is no crime scene? I mean, it's absolutely staggering. There's supposed to be a murder and we can't get any blood. Well, this is a whole new game changer for where this country's going. Don't sit back, relax, and think you've got other people doing things to make it easy for you because you're in a hurry as well. There's a combination, there's a perfect storm coming. Good news is we're ready. We're ready to take it on because you've done the hard yards, you've done the long work, and you are ready. You, as each individual Zucoin holder, will end up being the saving grace of waking up and preserving your sovereign rights through decentralisation, and you will be running nodes because you will be scared shitless to let someone else get hold of it. That is the beauty of the process which allows that tokenisation. And people, just think, whoever it was that wrote about the veggies, that is a golden example of the firepower of where this is heading. Not just about the price and you'll have a great time, I get that, and Dr. Zoo will be in his jet, he gets that, the Gulfstream. Probably won't be flying to the Middle East now as a result of this, because there's no point. There's no point in prodding anybody in that region for anything, and yet it's the greatest wealth on the planet has come from that region. We are very lucky, very blessed where we are, and the fact that we can deal with other jurisdictions that allow our product to explode, whether it's in Japan, South Korea. You think about the jurisdictions. None of those jurisdictions need a handful of Aussies to worry about price, because it will be those jurisdictions that make it happen. And that's the target of what we're doing. Well, I'm glad I got the bad news out of the way early, people. Got a couple of disgruntled ones, which is fantastic. All I can say is use AI while it lasts, because if they turn that tap off, one of the great inventions of research and firepower and knowledge and research on all sorts of levels will be set back years. So get out there. If you're bored tonight, it's a great read. Read the Quran. If you think you want to match that up, half of bits and pieces in the Quran are in the Old Testament. You can follow through with Abraham and Moses and have a great time on Genesis. Away you go. The Bible's there. Or you can just sit back and continue to be an atheist and let it all happen around you. And good luck with that. Stick with it, people. It's a tough one. It was a tough one today, but you're ready. You're ready. We're ready. Let's get out there. And that's what we're doing. We've got some big action in the next couple of weeks. We're on the cusp of greatness. Thanks very much. I'll leave it with you. Cheers, everybody.